In the spring of 2022, a 30-year-old man controlled a financial empire worth $60 billion. He had built it on a single, intoxicating promise. He had created, he said, a digital dollar that could never lose its value, backed not by money in a bank, but by math. Investors around the world poured in their savings. He mocked his doubters publicly, calling them poor. He named his newborn daughter after his creation. And then, over the course of about 72 hours, the math broke, and all $60 billion evaporated. This is the story of Terra, Luna, and Do Kwon. Sinister business, bankrupt empire. His name was Kwon Do-hyung, known to the world as Do Kwon. Born in South Korea in 1991, he was brilliant and relentlessly ambitious. He studied computer science at Stanford, then worked briefly as an engineer at Apple and Microsoft before returning to Seoul. He believed with total conviction that he was smarter than everyone around him, and he was not shy about saying so. In 2018, he co-founded a company called Terraform Labs with one goal: to build the money of the future. To understand what Terraform Labs built, you need to understand a stablecoin. Most cryptocurrencies, like Bitcoin, swing wildly in price, which makes them useless as everyday money. A stablecoin is designed to solve that. It is a digital token engineered to always be worth exactly $1. The safe way to do this is simple. For every digital dollar you issue, you keep one real dollar in a bank. Do Kwon thought that was old-fashioned, inefficient, and beneath him. His stablecoin would hold its value with no real dollars behind it at all. His digital dollar was called Terra USD, or UST, and the trick that was supposed to keep it pinned to $1 was a second token, a volatile companion coin called Luna. The two were locked together by an algorithm. The rule was simple. You could always trade one UST for exactly $1 worth of Luna and $1 worth of Luna for one UST no matter what. If UST ever dipped below $1, traders could buy it cheap, swap it for a full dollar of Luna, and pocket the difference. That buying pressure in theory would always push UST back to $1. It was elegant. It was clever. And it had a fatal flaw that critics pointed out from the very beginning. The entire system depended on Luna holding its value. If enough people lost faith and tried to cash out of UST all at once, the algorithm would have to print enormous quantities of new Luna to pay them. That flood of new Luna would crater its price, and a crashing Luna would make UST impossible to defend. The doubters had a name for this. They called it a death spiral. Do Kwon's answer to the death spiral problem was not to fix it. It was to grow so fast that no one would dare bet against him. And to grow, he needed people to hold UST. So Terraform Labs launched something called Anchor Protocol. Anchor was a savings account for UST, and it offered an interest rate that defied all financial gravity, nearly 20% a year. At a time when an ordinary bank paid less than 1%, Anchor promised to nearly double your money over 4 years on a token supposedly as safe as $1. 20% on a stable coin was, by any rational measure, impossible to sustain. The interest had to be paid from somewhere, and Anchor was not earning anywhere near 20%. It was paying old depositors with a reserve that was steadily draining, propped up by repeated cash injections from Do Kwon's own organization. It was, in structure, indistinguishable from a Ponzi scheme. New money paid the yield on the old money. As long as more new money kept arriving, it worked. The moment it stopped, it would collapse, and the new money came in a flood. Drawn by the 20% yield, deposits into Anchor exploded. At its peak, the protocol held more than $14 billion of UST. The price of Luna, riding the demand, soared from a few dollars to over 119. Do Kwon became a celebrity, a crypto god king with a cult-like following who called themselves Lunatics. He taunted his critics on social media with a now infamous line. "I don't debate the poor." He announced he had named his newborn daughter Luna after his coin. By early 2022, the combined value of UST and Luna had reached roughly $60 billion. To defend against the death spiral his critics kept warning about, Do Kwon created a reserve fund called the Luna Foundation Guard and stocked it with billions of dollars of Bitcoin. If UST ever wobbled, he would sell the Bitcoin to buy UST and push it back to $1. He had built, he believed, an unbreakable machine. He had also, without quite admitting it, conceded that his algorithmic dollar needed real reserves after all. The unraveling began on the 7th of May, 2022. Over a short window, several very large holders pulled hundreds of millions of dollars of UST out of Anchor and began selling it. The sudden selling nudged UST slightly below its $1 peg to about 98 cents. Normally, the algorithm would absorb this easily, but the dip spooked the market. Holders who had been promised an impossible 20% suddenly remembered that the whole thing was held together by confidence, and confidence was draining away by the second. Then the death spiral his critics had predicted for years began, exactly as they had described it. As panicked holders rushed to escape UST, the algorithm did what it was designed to do. It minted Luna to buy back the UST, but the demand to exit was so enormous that it had to print Luna by the billions, then the trillions. The supply of Luna exploded from about 350 million tokens to over 6 trillion in a matter of days. With that much new supply flooding out, the price of Luna did not just fall, it went almost to zero. The Luna Foundation Guard deployed its Bitcoin reserve, more than $3 billion of it, to try to buy UST and hold the peg. It vanished into the selling like a bucket of water thrown on a wildfire. It did nothing. Within days, Luna, which had traded above $100, was worth a fraction of a single cent. UST, the dollar that could never break, settled at around 10 cents and never recovered. The $60 billion ecosystem was, for all practical purposes, worth nothing. The human cost was staggering. Unlike a hedge fund blow-up, UST and Luna had been marketed to ordinary people as safe, as a high-yield savings account. Retail investors around the world, and especially in South Korea, had put in their savings, their retirement funds, in some cases everything they had. Online forums filled with people describing financial ruin. A suicide prevention hotline number was pinned to the top of the main Terra community board. The crypto faithful who had called themselves Lunatics were, many of them, wiped out completely. The contagion spread fast. The collapse of Terra blew a $60 billion hole in the heart of the crypto market and detonated a chain reaction. A massive hedge fund called Three Arrows Capital, which had bet heavily on Luna, collapsed within weeks. Lenders that had been exposed to Three Arrows, including Celsius and Voyager, fell soon after, freezing and then losing billions of dollars of their own customers' money. The Terra collapse did not stay contained. It was the first domino of the crypto winter of 2022. And Do Kwon? At first, defiant. He posted a recovery plan, then another, launching a brand new version of Luna in a desperate attempt to rebuild. It failed almost immediately. Then, as the lawsuits and the criminal investigations closed in from South Korea and the United States, he went quiet, and then he went dark. South Korean prosecutors charged him with fraud and issued a warrant. Interpol put out a red notice. The crypto god king who had told the world he did not debate the poor was now an international fugitive. For nearly a year, his location was a mystery. There were reported sightings in Singapore, then Dubai, then Serbia. Investigators tracked his movements across continents. And then, in March 2023, it ended in an unlikely place. At the airport in Podgorica, the capital of the small Balkan nation of Montenegro, Do Kwon was stopped while trying to board a private jet to Dubai. In his possession, authorities said, was a forged Costa Rican passport. The man whose digital dollar was supposed to be backed by unbreakable math had been undone by a fake travel document. What followed was an international tug-of-war over who would get to prosecute him. The United States wanted him. South Korea wanted him. Montenegro first jailed him on the false passport charge, then spent more than a year tangled in extradition fights between the two superpowers of crypto enforcement. Meanwhile, in the United States, the Securities and Exchange Commission pressed its civil case. In 2024, Terraform Labs and Do Kwon agreed to a settlement valued at about $4.5 billion, and a U.S. court found him liable for fraud. Late in 2024, Montenegro finally approved his extradition to the United States. He now faces a long list of federal fraud charges in New York. Prosecutors allege that he knew all along that his stablecoin could not actually hold its peg on its own, and that he secretly arranged for an outside trading firm to prop it up during an earlier wobble in 2021, then told the world it had recovered by the magic of his algorithm. If true, the unbreakable math was, from very early on, quietly being faked. The money is not coming back. The roughly $60 billion that vanished was not stolen and hidden in a vault somewhere. Most of it simply ceased to exist, because most of it had never really existed in the first place. It was a number on a screen, a confidence, a belief that a clever enough algorithm could conjure a dollar out of nothing. For a year and a half, millions of people believed it. The belief was the only thing holding it up. And belief, it turned out, was not a reserve. Do Kwon was not the first person to promise that he had abolished risk, and he will not be the last. The pattern is older than crypto, older than computers. Someone brilliant and certain builds a machine that prints money, insists the old rules of caution no longer apply to them, mocks the people who ask the obvious questions, and grows the thing so fast and so large that doubting it feels like missing out. It works, spectacularly, right up until the moment it doesn't. And the people who pay are almost never the person who built it. Bankrupt empire. Sinister business. The dark side of business. Subscribe.